Hello everybody and welcome to today's session on behalf of FarmyWeb.jobs. We've got together with the CRO Networking Group and Velocity Network Foundation to talk a little bit about how we can tackle candidate fraud, the risks of not doing this now and the things that we can do to make everything a little bit safer and a little bit easier. So a little bit first and foremost about FarmyWeb.jobs. We are a global life sciences jobs portal. We span across the entire life sciences industry. So obviously this is a matter that's really close to our hearts. My name's Simon Brough. I'm the head of business development there. What I'd like to do now is move on to introducing our panel, and I'll be starting first and foremost with Marianna Suckova.
Hi, Simon. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Marianna. I work in talent acquisition in EMEA region at Icon PLC, strategic solution service line. I've got more than 20 years of experience in the recruitment industry, and most of it had been spent within clinical research, drug development, and technology development as well. I got a clinical and nursing background, and I'm very passionate about the medicine, clinical research, and new energetic approaches in medical treatments. Thank you.
Thank you ever so much. It's really great to have you here, and having spoke to you about this a few times, your expertise is going to be invaluable here. Moving on now to Etan. Nice to have you.
Thanks, Simon. Hi, everyone. My name is Etan Bernstein. I've spent the last 30 years in HR in different capacities within organizations as consultants, working with startups. As a consultant, I had an opportunity to advise customers all around the world, companies based in over 30 countries, most of them global organizations, and seeing the struggles of those organizations as they deal with many different aspects of verifying individuals working for them. As a result of that work, in 2019, founded the Velocity Network Foundation in order to address what we believe is just a broken data layer, and that's the reason for a lot of the frustration we all experience. And at the Velocity Network Foundation, I had ecosystem development, which is really responsible for adoption and for orchestration of different ecosystems around the world. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, this is probably the third time we've spoken now, and I think every time we've spoken, you've blown my mind with a piece of information. So I think this is going to be an incredibly insightful session. Moving on finally to Vince.
Yeah, hi Simon. Obviously, I'm Managing Director of FarmyWeb.jobs, and I've been running in that role for the last 30 years almost. We at FarmyWeb look at a global level as to what's happening and what's affecting the industry, and it's very important that this particular issue is addressed as soon as possible. I've also was invited to join as the chair of the CRO Networking Group as an independent member, to really look at some of the issues affecting the industry, and we're just coming up to our 2-year anniversary, so it's working very well. I'm also an ex-board member of the Institute of Clinical Research, and I'm a fellow there still. We still regularly talk about issues affecting the whole industry, so that's a little bit of background on myself. Thanks, Simon.
Just to highlight the importance of what we're talking about today, when we started the CRO Networking Group, candidate fraud was probably one of the very first things that someone said, let's talk about this in real depth and detail. So it's just a sign as to where we can take things when we start talking, right?
Absolutely.
So I do have some background information just to evidence this, things that we've seen, published across the internet. First and foremost, just like to reference a Chad and Cheese podcast episode. Essentially, this is around job scam and losses. So as you can see from the information on the screen, job scam losses have risen drastically from 90 million to 501 million just in the last 4 years. Primarily, this is originating on LinkedIn, which we all know is a huge facilitator of this kind of scam behavior. Obviously, these scams are getting more and more sophisticated because more frequently we're seeing new AI tools. It's really hard to keep up with them. And they're deceiving even really educated individuals by eliminating traditional red flags and things like poor grammar and actually using convincing logos. It's got harder now than ever to identify a fraudulent candidate, and this is why this is so important. Also, the Gartner recently published some forces that are threatening quality. For those that can't see this, the first is interview fraud. 6% of candidates reported participating in at least one type of interview fraud. Personally, I believe that to be far higher. Secondly, generative AI. 39% of candidates say they've used generative AI in a hiring process. Again, anecdotally, I speak regularly at careers fairs, and a lot of people confess I use AI tools to do all of this because it's easier and quicker and I can do more. And then finally, skills evolution. 39% of workers' core skills will change by 2030, and that's largely due to a change in technology, which I think really highlights how the market is changing so rapidly. But of course, we do have lots of questions and lots of things to talk about today, so I will move on to this discussion part of today's session. And Marianna, I hope you don't mind, I'll start with you because where you're sat is a really unique place. You have an opportunity to observe the whole industry and a real unique perspective on what can be done to combat this. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think the challenges in background verification that we are experiencing inside of ICON are not only specific to us. They are, I think we are all challenged in the same manner. So what we see is AI, as you mentioned, being used in producing documentation or even an imagery where the candidates replace themselves with an AI bot really to attend the interviews. We are experiencing delays in verification due to regional variances, discrepancies in education and employment documentation. And this is specific to EMEA region, but also beyond that in Asia Pacific, in Americas as well. Inside of our larger organizations, we have got quite complex escalation protocols. So if you have got failed background checks, they require legal reviews, they require adjudication process, adverse action letters, notification. This, of course, has got an impact on our hiring timelines, and it delays them. We then experience technical issues in recruitment softwares and also operational workflow bottlenecks, because then that then requires a manual workaround for candidate processing. We are experiencing both within our organization, but overall within an industry as well, inaccurate background data where there are outdated or mismatched information that can cause wrongful rejection and increase in legal risk. Candidates are also themselves quite varied because we have got a legal and compliance risk, and then privacy concerns where candidates worry about sharing their personal data. They worry about the transparency and security because the trust is eroded. And then, if I have a look broadly speaking, the clinical research industry is a global industry. Drug development is a global industry. So we've got varying laws and data access across different countries and regions, and those also complicate our global background verification. So there is quite a few challenges. Then there is all the delays does add into costs.
Sure.
And we really, really feel it.
Yeah, and we've just seen how much the costs have risen in just the last few years alone. So that's a huge factor. The timing feels really right for this. Etan, how exactly does Velocity address this exact scenario that Marianna's facing? And can you give us any current examples?
Yeah, so everything Marianna described is not new, but of course everyone in the industry knows that it's becoming worse and worse and worse because the world has changed and our data infrastructure and the way we exchange information about candidates and their education, licenses, certificates, experiences has not adopted to a digital age, a world where we work globally, where we work digitally, and particularly a world, as you already mentioned, Simon, where we use AI. We moved from paper to faxes to emails to PDF files, right, over the last couple decades. But in the end, we're still relying on self-reported information and documents that can very easily be fraudulent and therefore putting a lot of work, more and more work on the employers and background screening companies and others to verify this information. And the Velocity Network Foundation, we got together as an industry body and said there's got to be a better way. We have to drive the whole method, the whole approach, the way we create, exchange, and verify data so it fits the needs in the digital age. And just like we don't travel with traveler's checks anymore, some of us are old enough to remember that, or with a big pocket full of different currencies. We use our Apple Pay or Google Pay anywhere we go in the world, and we can double click our phone and pay in yens for sushi in Tokyo and in euros for a beer in the Netherlands and in rupees and for a banana on the street in Delhi, right? We should be able to double click our digital wallet and share our education, our employment, our licensure, our certifications in a way that can immediately be verified with no fraud. The third party receiving that can receive that, click a button, know that all that information belongs to that individual, hasn't been tampered with in any way, is not fraudulent, and be able to make the best hiring decisions and not spend all the time and energy with all the things that Marianna described. That's what the Velocity Network provides, is the infrastructure and the trust framework to enable everyone in the world to benefit in an open public way.
Really well said. So it's giving you your time back, your money back, and your security back, all in one. It's a rather phenomenal thing, right? And do you have lots of case studies on this? The breadth of work you've done, is it detailed?
Yes. So first of all, everything we do is open and public, and I invite anyone listening here to come visit the Velocity Network Foundation website. But let me give one example of an ecosystem that I think is one of the more thriving ones, just to give the audience an example.
Yeah.
So delivering this is not, although the infrastructure is global and open, in the end the challenge is driving adoption within ecosystems. One of the more advanced ecosystems that we have is in the healthcare environment in the United States, where under really the leadership and push of HCA Healthcare, one of the largest healthcare systems in the world and one of the largest in the United States, has really built a whole thriving ecosystem of employers, education institutions, licensing bodies, particularly in Florida and Texas, but gradually growing across the United States, where individuals are getting their credentials as part of their education. They can get their employment records and other types of certifications and license verified once and issued to them as verifiable digital credentials, and apply for jobs at some of the leading employers, including HCA Healthcare, but others as well, and have those credentials verified immediately, including by some of the leading background screeners that are involved in this. So really cutting time, improving candidate experience. And I quote Jennifer Barris, the CHRO of HCA, who says, we spend a week, 10 days on an average to onboard a nurse, and we onboard over 80,000 people a year. So if HCA can cut 1 day on an average, that's 80,000 to 100,000 extra work days that have been gained to help patients. And think about going from 10 days to 10 minutes. And that's where we should all be aiming for, is completely revolutionizing the way we think about this. It shouldn't take time. It should be digital and trusted. It should be immediate. It shouldn't, and that's where we're all working to make that happen.
I mean, it sounds like the uptake is already incredibly huge. But for those in the sort of recruitment area, I understand that the REC's recently joined you, the Recruitment and Employment Confederation.
Yeah, so we've been very fortunate that in the UK that the UK Recruitment and Employment Confederation, led by Neil Carberry, has recognized that the move to verifiable digital credentials is a real opportunity for the staffing industry in the UK, and that as a professional association and professional organization, it's the role of an REC, but the parallel would be in any industry and anywhere in the world, to really lead its constituents and its industry toward a digital age, making the staffing industry more competitive, reducing the cost structure for those, enabling them to serve their customers and candidates better. And so the REC is leading an effort, which we hope we'll be able to make lots of big announcements on very soon, with the largest staffing companies in the United Kingdom, to drive adoption of verifiable credentials. And given the size of the staffing industry, employing millions of individuals at any given time during the year, and the churn or the the rate of people coming in and out of roles across the staffing industry, that has an enormous impact not only on staffing companies, but on the employment market or labor market in general. So we're really looking forward to seeing that explode as the RAC leads its community.
I mean, it definitely looks like the future to me, but I'd like to put the entire panel, actually, starting with yourself, Etan. What does the future look like with Velocity?
So it's really simple for anyone who has never heard of verifiable credentials or, digital credentials to think about this as the way they think about a digital boarding pass. So as most of us, or I think most people today who travel a lot, like I do, don't print out a boarding pass at home or at the airport. We log in, we do our check-in in advance and get our boarding pass onto our phone, and we feel confident we can go anywhere. Just tap our phone on the different screens in the airport. It's fast, it's easy, we can't lose it, and so on. Right? Think about all the credentials that you get throughout your employment world, your life, in the same way. Think of them just as being passes on your phone, right? Your education, your licenses, your certifications, your employment records saying you worked at this company from this date to that date in this capacity, recommendation letters, training you've gone through, skills. You mentioned, Simon, the trend that Gartner quoted for skills you've proven that you're adept at, right? All those things, basically as digital credentials in your phone, that sharing them is as easy as tapping your phone for an Apple payment or showing your boarding pass when boarding an airplane. But that's the key thing for the individuals, the ownership and control of the credentials. The really cool thing is for the employers and the background screening companies and anyone receiving this data is that verification is just as easy as verifying a boarding pass. You know how sometimes you board and you get suddenly someone hears and a little red X instead of a green, and they stop them and they check why did that happen? Well, because there's instant verification that boarding pass is actually a real boarding pass. It hasn't been used already. It belongs to that person. Their seat hasn't changed. All that happens digitally immediately, right on the spot. The same thing, verifiable credentials of Velocity Network enable the same thing to happen for employers. An individual shares their credentials, like boarding an airplane, and the employer immediately, digitally, within a microsecond, can verify that all those credentials have not been tampered with. They actually belong to that person. None of them have been revoked, and therefore that person can be onboarded immediately and start to work.
I mean, it sounds phenomenal to me. Marianna, I'd like to bring you in at this point. What do you think the future looks like with Velocity?
I think there is no turning back. The world overall is marching in the digital age. From my perspective, if we could get more speed, more safety and an assurance, put the candidate experience at the center of it, have an ability to start the candidate faster, with less adjudication process, with less legal and compliance risk, and as a result, not only reduce the time, but also reducing the time actually very directly converts into more revenue for us, of course, but then also ensuring that the background check it is not a point of anxiety for the end user, which is a candidate and an employer, but it's just one of those quick things that Etan mentions. You click on your phone, you've got your boarding pass, you click on your phone, you have got your verifiable employment and educational credentials. It lowers the anxiety and increases positive experience for the candidate at a really stressful point when they are changing their job. So for me, it is not a question of if, it is a question when. And from the perspective of employers like Icon, the sooner the better.
Yeah, absolutely. Vince, how about you? What's your view?
Well, I think obviously FarmingWeb has been supporting the industry for nearly 30 years in recruitment, and we don't just work in the clinical research space. Obviously, we're in pharma, we're in biotech, and there's a lot of companies out there that are really worried about this. It's costing a lot of money. It takes a lot of time. I think the biggest thing for me with Velocity is it allows us to get that integrity back in your recruitment process. We've talked a little bit about, a lot of this breeding going on in LinkedIn. Well, LinkedIn can't fight everything with AI. They're trying and they do their best to stop it, but people are just getting cleverer. AI is clever. There's always going to be ways around it, which is why I'm a big supporter of what Etan's doing and why we've put this together, because I think we've got a solution here, but we all need to get involved to make it work. And to me, it is the cost. It is the time. When we're looking at talent acquisition teams, how much of their time do they spend going through individual candidates, trying to find ways of doing it? I mean, one of the reasons we put the CRO networking group together is to sort of share the fact that we're all aware of some of these things, but how aware are we? And it never ceases to amaze me when we come across companies or people that have not even, experienced this yet, which I'm surprised about. So are there people getting through the process? Are we not doing the right things? What's the industry standard? It's all about integrity. This is a professional industry. We need to make sure the right people in the right places and who are who they say they are. So from my point of view, it's going to happen. We just need to make it happen quicker.
Yeah. I think one of the big blocks for when you need to do anything is people start talking about cost immediately. One of the things we've covered quite regularly in this conversation is actually the cost of not doing this is quite astronomical. So Etan, at this point, I'd love to come back to you if possible. What is the rough cost of doing this for somebody?
So the direct cost of actually verifying, so if an employee a candidate has shared credentials with an organization, the organization wants to verify that, very roughly the cost of verifying a full person, all the information about them, is about $1, to give a sense. So that person may have 20, 50, 30 different facts as credentials, and it's a digital transaction. Think, right? It's not about paying the organization. It's about just paying for a digital transaction of trust. And we're talking about $1. There are some things that impact that number, but that's what we're talking about versus going to different sources, in the U.S. like Equifax or the National Student Clearinghouse, in the U.K. like JISC or HMRC and other places in the world, whatever the sources are. Some of them are free, some of them are paid. Many of them have gateways. It's going to all these places separately to check the information. We're talking about one transaction, one digital transaction a second that costs about $1 per person for all the information that person has. I do want to say that the transition to a world where there are technologies, so the applicant tracking systems, the recruiting marketing systems, the candidate relationship management systems, all enable that to happen, is a transition that will cost organizations, and particularly we hope that the vendors, the tech vendors who are going to implement this into their software, cost some money. But it's a one-time investment to transition the world to a much more efficient and much more trustworthy and simple world.
Absolutely. And I mean, you sort of touched on it there a little bit, but what would you say the cost of not doing this is? What's the cost of, pleading ignorance at this point?
I think building on what Marianna and Vince have both said, this is going to get exponentially worse. I mean, it's not that the steady state is good. It's not a steady state. The steady state is that AI and the digital internet are just going to become more and more confusing. I just read an article yesterday that within a few years, 99% of the content is every transaction, email, website, LinkedIn post on the internet will be bot generated. So it's going to get harder and harder and harder in the digital world to differentiate facts and truth from other things, from know who you're interacting with, what is actually factual. The only way to address that is to embed trust at the source through verifiable credentials. And so ignoring this does not maintain a steady state, which is not good, but it's just diving deeper and deeper into a world that's going to become harder and harder and harder to retain compliance and trust and the assurance that Vince talked about that is so critical to operate in the industries you work in.
Absolutely. And Marianna, as someone on the front lines of recruitment and as also someone who's working for a very large global CRO, what would you say the cost of not adopting this is?
Well, the cost is not only monetary, monetary, there is probably a possibility to quantify it because we all like sign dollars on front of numbers, don't we? That really makes it really real.
Yeah, sure.
The real cost is, in a clinical research industry, if I have a look at an industry, we put experimental drug into sick humans. If we've got a person in that clinical trial who is manning that clinical trial, who is not who they say they are, the cost, I don't really think it can be costed out because it impacts on the whole integrity of the clinical trial. So then there is the cost is reputational, where our clients, our pharmaceutical clients, do need to be able to trust us that we are putting who we say we are putting to help them develop and advance their clinical pipelines. So there is a dollar cost there in terms of the cost, the delays, the legal and compliance exposures. But then there also are costs that I don't think can very easily be quantified, which is integrity of the clinical trials, which is reputational costs within an industry, and probably many more that we do not yet even see because this is an evolution process. And when we are talking about the fraud that you mentioned earlier, Simon, 90 million to 500 million, but that is only small part of it on the one piece of technology that is being used in the recruitment industry. Where is unemployment fraud? Where is, which it's very difficult to track because if somebody commits unemployment fraud, you are, unless there is a prosecution and a criminal record as a result, you can't even find it.
Oh, sure.
It stays hidden. Where is the financial fraud within an employment? That's another completely different bucket. So that $500 million that is being quantified is just one very, very small portion of the whole big bucket of fraud that is going on that is oftentimes invisible to the public.
When you put it that way, it's incredibly poignant, but it also ups the urgency of this and the ante very much so. Yeah, wow. Vince, at this point, I'd love to bring you in because obviously running PharmaWeb Jobs, huge life sciences jobs portal, we deal with applications all day, every day. What would you say the cost of not implementing something like this would be from that perspective?
Well, I think from PharmaWeb's point of view, one of the things that we don't really touch on very often is that we have a duty of care to candidates that come to our site. Okay, and that duty of care actually then transponds quite closely to what Etan's trying to do here, because what we're doing now is we're giving those global job seekers the opportunity to be mobile. They've got that mobility. They can go anywhere in the world. They can be verified anywhere in the world quickly and efficiently. And I think where we're going in the future is they might not even, as we're already seeing, have to turn up for an interview. We can do it all online. We can do everything online. They might stay at home. So by putting a system like this in place, we're guaranteeing that those candidates that are applying for jobs, that are looking for their next role, looking at where they're going in their career, they have that freedom to do so by using a system like this, which allows them to verify themselves anywhere at any time. It's all about mobile technology. Everything, as Etan's already said, is on your mobile phone. Have that freedom. And obviously, you've then got the integrity of who you are. They know who you are. And, you know, we can get rid of a lot of these problems that we're facing at the moment. We need to do this quickly because it's only going to get worse. You know, AI is getting very, very clever indeed. You know, you can only do so much to stop it. But this is a system that overrides that, as far as I'm concerned.
Very well said. Very well said. Okay, so we've established that this is incredibly powerful. There will be a lot of people listening going, but I only run a small boutique, company. There's only really 25, 30 people here at any one time. There will also be huge global entities. Etan, is there a size of company that isn't relevant to this, or is this really for everybody?
This is for everyone and should serve a company employing one employee to a company employing 1 million employees, like a Walmart. It just like email is for everyone. And Excel is for everyone. The ability, anyone I interact with, by the way, not only employees, consultants, temporary staff, any interactions I have with people anywhere, business interactions, I can verify that they're actually who they claim they are. And every company wants to make sure that their interactions are trustworthy. And so this should serve everyone at every company of every size.
So at this point, we're kind of coming to a bit of a close here, but in terms of a soundbite, summarizing it up, why should people use Velocity, and what would you say the top 5 reasons are for doing so?
So I tried this. You challenged me on 5, so I'll try really quickly. So 1 is trust, the highest level of assurance and integrity, as Vince has said many times. 2, privacy. We didn't talk about this a lot, but we believe individuals have to have control and ownership of who sees their data and how it's used. 3, global. We need a solution taking into account that the workforce is global. Companies like Etan are global and want to hire people all around the world and don't want different solutions. You need a solution that really addresses global mobility and global company needs. 4, cost. We're going to cut costs by 90%, 95%, 98% for employers on verification. And 5, and probably maybe the most important, reduce the friction and the time to make this all happen. Everyone benefits when verification can happen in minutes instead of days, weeks, and even sometimes months in some cases.
Yeah, I mean, there's no downside from my point of view. Absolutely no downside. So from us, from the industry, from RecTech, what do you need to make this work?
I think the big challenge, and that's why I so much appreciate the work that Vince and Marianna are leading through the CRO group, is that networking group, is that this has to be an ecosystem play. The challenge, it sounds marvelous, and it really is marvelous. But the challenge is no single organization can do this alone. We need to build ecosystems where there are employers, issuing organizations, or the licensing bodies, the certification bodies, all collaborating together. And we don't have a good history of working collaboratively across industries. That's where we need the leadership of the industry saying we all benefit and all boats will rise if we make this happen. And what we're seeing around the world is when there are industry collaborations, led by a few passionate people who want to make this happen, that's when the change happens. And I think this is one of the areas where it's clear that the opportunity is in front of us.
I completely agree with you. And I think cross-industry is probably one of the key points as well. Life sciences feels very siloed, but really if we start talking more to finance, to oil and gas, to hospitality, we can get on top of this as a global issue. So how do people reach you at the Velocity Network Foundation? What's the best way?
So I assume we'll have a slide with we can't have a slide with our emails, but velocitynetwork.foundation is our website, www.velocitynetwork.foundation, or just look for Velocity Network Foundation. You'll find all the information on how to contact any of us to move these things forward.
Amazing. I would love to thank the panel for their time today. This has been a really interesting discussion. I'm sure there's lots of questions, so if anyone does have them, send them my way. I'll make sure they get to where they need to get. We also have, one-pagers on the Velocity Network Foundation that we can send out if people want them. But for now, thank you so much to everybody for coming along today.
Thanks, Simon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take good care now.
Thank you.